And joining us now with more on the news out of Iran is CBS News foreign affairs analyst Pamela Falk. Pam, good morning.
Good morning, Michelle.
You've covered the UN for years. You've seen sanctions time and time again. Are they going to work in this case?
Well, the problem President Obama faces is that sanctions do work sometimes, and tough sanctions work, but they have to be airtight, and these are not. There is a white knight, as they say in sanctions language, meaning that if some country bails out the country that's being sanctioned, it doesn't work. And in this time, China is bailing out Iran in a big way. And only this past September, China, the National Petroleum Company, inked a deal with Iran to develop one of their oil fields that has the largest reserves in the world found since the 70s. So you have a country helping. Tough sanctions don't necessarily work and probably won't work when that is the case.
Iran had one course, now they switched courses. Why is that?
Well, that's really true. Only a week ago, they said, yes, we'll export the uranium enrichment and to be enriched outside the country. And this was a deal that was brokered in Geneva and in Vienna by the UN. And it was a compromise deal. So they could have the energy reactor, which is what they claim it's for, but without the fears in the international community that they might also be developing nuclear weapons. The plans seem to be ready to go. There was a December deadline that President Obama put on it. The Iranians didn't react. And then last week they said yes. They changed course. And the back and forth probably reflects more of the fact that the country is in crisis. The opposition, as you know, is growing tremendously. And there's a back and forth between the hardliners and the reformers. And so once they said yes, they changed their mind. They also didn't like that much the deal that they were being offered by the International Watchdog Agency.
A nearby country, Israel, had a very strong reaction to it, understandably. Yes. Will Israel take it in its own hands and strike? What's the best course of action for that country?
That's always been an option that Israel has considered, some kind of a preemptive strike. A preemptive strike is not necessarily going to stop Iran's nuclear program moving forward, and that's because there's so many underground nuclear facilities in Natanz and Isfahan, all of the ones in Bushehr that Iran has. It is unlike Israel's ability to attack the Iraq nuclear plants as it did once, or the Syrian nuclear plants. And the United States obviously is trying to stop Israel from thinking that way because it will create a major crisis. The problem is if U.S. and the U.S. Congress has its own sanctions, EU sanctions, and all of those don't stop Iran, Israel will consider that as an option. And that's the biggest problem, is to try to find a way. Perhaps Iran will fall of its own weight because of this legitimacy crisis, and these sanctions could have some short-term impact before the Chinese oil fields are developed. But it's a real problem because right now Iran is on a course to develop the technology, and if it wants, nuclear weapons.
Now this is all happening as Iran prepares for a big anniversary there.
Yes.
And so we're hearing about protests possibly. What else can we expect?
This is February 11th is the 31st anniversary of the Islamic Revolution. And usually the government was in control of these protests and used it to show support. Right now, the opposition has really captured these protests, and the Obama administration would be well advised to support the opposition in any way it can and publicly to make sure that they really feel like they have support. They felt they won the June elections. They feel the government is not right to be isolating Iran from the rest of the world with this nuclear program. And so you're going to see a lot of protests and the government's very brutal crackdown.
All right. CBS News foreign affairs analyst Pamela Falk. Pam, as always, thanks for being with us.
Great to see you, Michelle.